Libra, pay attention. A butterfly will be a sign. You saw that butterfly again this week, didn't you? And you've wondered if it means anything, but what if the sign doesn't come from outside? What if what you called a message from the universe is proof that a part of you has already decided something that the other hasn't yet dared to admit? Libra is always looking outward, calibrating everyone's balance, and forgets to notice its own inner workings. By the end of this video, that butterfly will stop seeming like a coincidence. There's something nobody told you about that butterfly you've been seeing too often this week, and I need to tell you before you keep believing the pretty version of the story. Because the pretty version is always the same. The universe sent a signal. Some higher power chose that particular creature, that color, that movement, to tell you that a new phase has begun. And look, I understand the urge to believe that. It's comforting to think that there's someone or something watching your life attentively enough to send you coded messages on colorful wings. But if you stop for 5 seconds and are honest with yourself, you'll realize something strange. The butterfly has always been there. In the neighbor's garden, in the bush next to the bus stop, on the fence you pass every single day without paying attention. It didn't just appear now. It only became visible now. And that difference changes everything. There's a well-known phenomenon that any psychologist can explain in 5 minutes. When you buy a car of a specific color, suddenly that car seems to be everywhere. It was always there, but your brain never had a reason to filter it as relevant. The moment it starts to matter to you, the brain reorganizes what deserves attention, and the world seems to have changed. When in reality, what changed was the filter. This happened to me exactly at a stage in my life when I was constantly saying yes to everything others needed and no to the one thing I needed myself. And suddenly, butterflies everywhere. I wanted to believe it was a sign. Only much later did I understand it was something else, something far more unsettling. Because Libra has a natural talent, it's possible to read the atmosphere even before entering the room. You feel the tension in the air before any words are spoken. You notice when someone is sad even if they are smiling. This radar never shuts off. It calibrates the tone of your voice, chooses the words that will soothe, decides what should be said next, and what is best left unsaid. It's an emotional maintenance job that you don't even realize you're doing, because it started so early in your life that it became part of your way of being. The problem is that this type of vigilance consumes an absurd amount of attention, and attention is a limited resource. So while your radar is entirely focused outward, calibrating the emotional climate of others, there is very little space left to notice anything that doesn't require your immediate intervention. That's why, for most of your life, you simply don't see butterflies. Not because they aren't there, but because your attention system is too busy taking care of everything and everyone except you. But there's a very specific moment when that radar changes direction on its own, without asking permission, without warning. And it's precisely at that moment that the pattern suddenly becomes visible. The color, the slight movement, the almost physical sensation of noticing something that has always been there, but only now manages to pierce through the excess noise. The question no one has asked you yet is, what needs to happen inside a person who lives watching everyone but themselves for the radar to finally turn inward? Because not just anything can do that. It's not a bad day, nor a passing tiredness. It's another kind of movement, more silent, more dangerous for those who live to keep everything in order, the kind of movement that only happens when a part of you, deep down, has already made a decision that the upper part to complete. And it is precisely in this interval between what has already been decided internally and what has not yet been assumed externally that all this discomfort you have been feeling resides. The same discomfort that suddenly made the butterfly become the only thing your eyes can see. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose didn't come to me as a prediction manual. It came as a mental attitude, a way of looking inward with the same careful attention that Libra always dedicates outward. It exists precisely to help those born with this gift of balancing everything around them to stop getting lost in the search for harmony in others, and finally learn to recognize their own balance without depending on anyone else to validate it first. If you've made it this far and are still processing what you've just heard, still feeling that strange discomfort in your chest without an exact word for it, that's no coincidence. It's your own internal radar asking to be heard, perhaps for the first time in a long time. And this kind of moment doesn't usually repeat itself in the same way twice. The more you postpone listening, the deeper that discomfort hides again. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And in the meantime, tell me in the comments, when was the last time you felt you needed to make a decision, but chose to keep things calm instead? Notice something that happens minutes before it rains, even when the sky is still clear. The air changes its smell, your skin feels a different kind of chill, the birds become quiet in a way that no one needs to explain. The body knows before the mind confirms. It's the same with decisions. Long before you can put into words what's going to change, some part of you already feels the air pressure shifting. That's the exact moment when patterns start to become visible. The butterfly, the same song playing in 3 different places, the same number appearing for no reason. It's not the universe warning you from the outside, it's you feeling the chill before the rain itself. Notice also that this chill never arrives all at once. It comes in small, almost imperceptible layers, a tiredness you didn't have before when doing the same thing all the time, a desire to be quiet precisely when you would normally step in to soften the conversation. A silence that instead of bothering you, begins to feel like rest. None of these things alone seems like a big deal, but together they form the beginning of a reorganization that your conscious mind hasn't yet authorized you to call by its proper name. And here lies the most uncomfortable part of all this. If one part of you has already sensed the change coming, why does the other part insist on pretending that everything is fine, that everything is in balance, that nothing needs to change yet? Because admitting that you already know is admitting that the choice to continue as you are has ceased to be inevitable and has become, from now on, an active choice. And choosing to continue knowing is much heavier than continuing not knowing. While you pretend you don't know, there's still an excuse available. The moment you admit it, the excuse disappears, and only you remain, facing your own will. Some people spend entire years in this interval, feeling the chill, seeing the signs, without ever taking the step of admitting aloud what they already know inside. And the curious thing is that this kind of waiting is never neutral. It costs energy. The same energy that could be used to experience the change is already being spent maintaining the illusion that it hasn't arrived yet. It's like holding your breath underwater, waiting for the right moment to surface, when in reality, the only way to keep breathing is to release the air that no longer fits in your chest. Feeling the chill before the rain and still acting as if the sky were clear is one of the quietest habits of those born under the sign of Libra. Pretending not to know yet is more comfortable than admitting that the decision has already begun to form inside. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, was created precisely for this moment, the interval between feeling and admitting. It helps you recognize your own balance before it becomes an overload kept in silence, without depending on anyone else to validate this change. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. Libras learn early on that maintaining visible peace is worth more than expressing their discomfort. So, instead of complaining, they absorb. Instead of disagreeing, they adjust their tone to fit the remaining space. It's like an electrical voltage regulator, the kind installed right at the power entrance of a house. When an overload comes from the street, it absorbs the excess on its own to protect the appliances inside. Nobody inside the house notices the effort. Only the regulator knows how much it's silently enduring so that everything seems stable to others. Think about how many times you've done exactly that with people. An argument you could have started but preferred to let die on its own. A desire you suppressed because expressing it would create discomfort that seemed greater than letting go. An invitation you accepted just to avoid disappointing even though your whole body was begging you to stay home. Each of these small absorptions seems harmless in isolation. The problem is never an overload alone. The problem is the sum of all of them, piled up silently year after year without any maintenance. The problem is that every regulator has a limit, and when that limit is repeatedly exceeded, without maintenance, without pause, something ends up burning out inside, silently, the way Libra does everything, without fanfare, without scandal, just a wear and tear that accumulates until one day there's not even enough energy to smile. How long do you think you can maintain the balance of others before completely losing your own? The most ironic thing is that nobody around usually notices this strain while it's happening. On the contrary, the more you absorb, the more reliable you seem, the more people get used to seeking you out, precisely because with you, everything seems lighter, easier, more resolved. Nobody asks the price of this because, from the outside, it seems like there is no price at all. Only those inside the regulator know how much overload was silently absorbed in just that week, that month, that entire year in which you were called balanced. And there's a specific trap in this type of recognition. The more praise you receive for keeping everything in order, the harder it becomes to admit, even to yourself, that it comes at a cost. After all, how can you complain about a role that everyone seems to admire so much in you? This is the part that nobody talks about out loud. Praise, when it always comes for the same quality, becomes a gentle prison. You start protecting your own image as a balanced person more carefully than you protect your own well-being, because losing that label seems in some way to also lose the place you occupy in the lives of those around you. There comes a moment when the pattern changes even without asking permission from your conscious will. It's like an old lock, jammed for years, that suddenly turns on its own because the right key finally fits, even if no one inside was ready to open that door yet. You can resist, you can pretend you didn't feel the turn, you can continue holding the doorknob from the inside, but the lock has already turned. And what hurts most of the time isn't the change itself. It's the resistance against something that a part of you has already let in. There's a curious detail about this type of lock. The longer it's jammed, the louder it makes when it finally unlocks. Not because the mechanism is broken, but because the rusted iron, accumulated over years of immobility, needs to overcome its own weight of inertia. That's why sometimes the decision that was forming inside seems abrupt, urgent, almost violent, when in reality it's just unlocking everything at once that should have been moving, little by little, a long time ago. Those observing from the outside often think the change was sudden. Out of nowhere, she decided that, out of nowhere, he became a different person. But it's almost never out of nowhere. It's the silent accumulation of small chills in the air, of small silences kept, of small overloads absorbed alone, until the rusty lock can no longer resist the turning of the key. What seems sudden to those watching from the outside was, in fact, the slowest and most carefully postponed result that exists. The lock turning on its own, even when you're not ready to open the door, shows something that hurts to admit. Resisting a change that has already begun hurts more than the change itself. And it is precisely at this point that most people freeze, trying to hold the doorknob as if that could undo the turning. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about all this is realizing that you don't need to force this rotation. You just need to stop holding on. A kaleidoscope doesn't produce a new design because someone yells at it to change. It changes because, at some point, some hand slowly rotates the cylinder, and the same fragments, the same pieces of glass that have always been there, rearrange themselves into a new design. You don't need to create new pieces to deserve a different life. You just need to stop holding the kaleidoscope at the same angle, afraid of what might appear when it rotates. Notice that no design within a kaleidoscope is permanent. Each one exists only until the next turn, and even then, each one seems complete, definitive, while it's there. That's exactly how an entire life works, being gradually reorganized. Each phase seems like the final version of you, until a new turn reveals a design that is also you, only organized in a different way. There is no wrong version. There is only the refusal to let the cylinder turn, and there's something only those who have held a real kaleidoscope know. You never see the next pattern while it's still spinning. There's always a fraction of a second of scrambling, of a blurred image, of colored glass shifting without yet forming anything recognizable. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing. And that's exactly why so many people prefer to stop spinning halfway, just to escape that moment of blurred image, even knowing that on the other side of that discomfort, there's a new pattern waiting to form. To stop holding the kaleidoscope at the same angle is perhaps the bravest gesture a balanced person can make for themselves, because it means accepting to see a new design, even without yet knowing what it will be. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, exists precisely to accompany this unhurried journey, teaching those who are constantly balancing everything around them to trust their own internal rearrangement, instead of waiting for an external signal to feel permission to change. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. And that's why the butterfly was never a message from the outside. It was always a reflection of a shift that was already happening inside you, silently, long before your eyes could confirm it. The universe didn't choose this symbol to warn you about anything. You just finally became quiet enough inside to notice something that had always been there, waiting for the moment when your attention stopped being entirely focused outward. Perhaps the question was never what that sign is trying to tell you. Perhaps the right question has always been, now that you've noticed the rotation, what are you going to do with the new design that's forming? Because it has already begun. With or without your conscious permission, the fragments are already moving. The only choice left is whether you will continue with your eyes closed, trying to maintain the old design for a little longer, or whether you will finally open your eyes to see what is forming inside you. There is a quiet beauty in being born under the sign that carries, in its very symbol, a scale, not because the life of those born this way is more balanced than others, but because these people have been given the most delicate task of all, learning, in practice, every day, what it truly means to weigh two things at the same time without letting either of them fall to the ground. This has never been about pleasing everyone. It has always been about finding, amidst so much external noise, one's own center of gravity. And perhaps that's why symbols appear precisely to those who have already learned, even without realizing it, to pay attention to the little things. The butterfly lands on those who have refined their own gaze enough to notice a colorful wing amidst the hustle and bustle of the day. It's not luck. It's sensitivity, the same sensitivity that, if well directed inward, is capable of perceiving each turn, each change, each fragment rearranging itself even before anyone else notices. There's no rush in this process. The kaleidoscope will spin in its own time, forming patterns that only make sense when you stop trying to control each piece of glass and simply trust the movement. And the next time a butterfly crosses your path, perhaps you won't need to wonder what the universe is trying to tell you. Perhaps it will be enough to smile quietly, knowing that that small, colorful sign is just the gentle reflection of something beautiful that has been moving for a while now, deep inside you.